everybody? Welcome to Crash Course Catching. I am your catching coach, Frank Ruvoli, and I just want to take the time to thank you for those of you who listened to my first podcast, What Makes a Good Catcher. And today I want to build on that, and I want to talk about the hierarchy of the catching fundamentals. And this is for those of you who, sometimes I get this question. People come up to me and they say, hey, little Timmy or little Julie, is starting to catch. Where do I start? What do I do? What do I need to focus on? What's important? What's important? I mean, that's the main question. There's a lot of times where I will get called by coaches to work with their team, and they'll have me come in, and the kid's been catching for a couple of years, whoever they have on their team. They'll have 2 or 3 of them, and they'll say, hey, I'm looking for you to tell me who's the best, but then I'm also looking for you to, show them how to throw, because, we just got to make sure that we're keeping runners honest, or I need you to show them how to block because blocking was a big issue last year. And, I just kind of say, okay, because I want to get in there and I want to see what these kids can do. But for the most part, a lot of their issues that they have in blocking and throwing all comes from the beginning, because they don't even have a solid foundation of what they need to do. So, we're going to talk about how to build the fundamentals up from each other. But honestly, there's some things that, if you're a coach and you are looking at your catcher and you're saying something's off, something's not working, continue to work on throwing. If the throw's off, okay, the throw might be off. Well, that can go back to a lot of different things, not just the throw. So you need to understand the fundamentals. You need to understand the building blocks of the fundamentals. And by doing that, that's only going to help you. If you're a coach, teach your catchers how to be better. And if you're a catcher, that's only going to help you be better, having these solid fundamentals, having these building blocks. It's like anything else. If you build if you have a bigger block, if you ever played Jenga, once you know that the top is getting top heavy and the bottom is starting to get a little less, what happens? Jenga topples over, okay? So to start with, and for you guys and girls who are younger, if there's any younger kids watching this or listening to this on the podcast, if you don't know what hierarchy means, it's just the in order of importance. So I like to say the hierarchy of the catching fundamentals. So what is most important? What comes first? What comes second? What comes third? What comes fourth? And for me, we're gonna talk about 4 things today. So again, this is for those of you who you might be starting, or you might have been catching already for a while just with no formal training, and you're thinking, well, there's something off. I need to go back and check it out. To me, this is how I learned. I caught my entire career. I've been coaching catchers for 10 years, and this is how I teach them. And I think this is important, and it's worked for all of them. It worked for me. So I'm just saying this from experience, and I hope it's going to work for you. So first off, in order to get to that point, we got to think, what are the fundamentals? So what are the fundamentals of a catcher? I wish this was a call-in show, because then you guys call in and I can hear all kinds of different answers. But, what are the fundamentals? Well, everybody knows a catcher needs to be able to catch the ball, right? That's our job description. That's the name of our position. If we can't catch, we're going to have a hard time being the catcher on your team. So we have to be able to catch, but not only catch just in general. We have to receive properly, and we have to be able to frame, right? So we have to catch and receive. And then the biggest one that I always get is the catchers need to be able to throw runners out, right? Of course they do. Of course they do. They need to be able to throw runners out. People stealing second, people stealing third. Let's pick off a runner at first. So we have catch and receive. We have throwing, okay? Well, what else is there? There's blocking, right? We don't want pass balls because that leads to other issues. So we need to make sure we have catchers that can block as well. So we have catch and receive, we have throwing, we have blocking. And there's one that is so often overlooked, that it's such an important part of the fundamentals, but I feel like it's always just overlooked. And this is the first thing that whenever I go in and I haven't worked with a catcher ever, or it's the first time, or it's a new kid, or it's somebody who's older that I've never worked with, the first thing I look at is their stances. And there's 3 stances, and if you don't know them, I'm going to talk about them here in a second, but the stances are so important, and I believe that just your stances are part of the fundamentals. So, as we said, we have your catch and receive and your framing, your throwing, your blocking, your stances. So how do those add up? How do those go in order? How are they important? And again, if you don't know what these fundamentals are, if you don't know your stances, if you don't know how to catch and receive and frame, if you don't know how to block, if you don't know how to throw, go to quickstarttocatching.com. That's a program I created. It's about an hour of video, going in-depth instruction, giving you drills to do for each of these fundamentals. It's everything you need to know to be a solid catcher. This is everything I work with my lessons. Not only if you're new, but if you've been with me for a long time, this is stuff that we work on every day or every week as much as I see you, because it's so important. These fundamentals are what makes you a solid catcher. And then from there you go on, and there's so much more we need to know as catchers. So if you don't know what these fundamentals are, if you question any of these in terms of I've never heard that term before, or I don't know the 3 stances, or I didn't know the difference between receiving and framing, quickstarttocatching.com. You can go there, you can purchase the program, and it's to me, it's an incredible value. It's everything I teach every day to my lessons throughout the last 10 years, and which I will continue to teach for years to come. So make sure you check that out. But again, today we're talking about what's the hierarchy, what's the order of importance of the fundamentals of catching. And so we said, what are the fundamentals? They are, the way that I usually hear them from coaches and parents and players are, I need to be able to catch. Everybody wants me to throw out runners. Oh, and then I need to block. And then everybody always forgets about the stances. Well, what's the first fundamental that I think is so important and, is often overlooked? And I'm sure you've already guessed it from what I've already said here, but it's the stances, right? Number 1 is the stances, or are the stances, I should say, because there's 3 of them. This is so overlooked in catchers and coaches and parents. Anytime there's a young catcher, I always see there's always the same stance. And then when I work with older kids that I've never worked with before, and they come to me to to change up a little bit, there's always something off about their stance, or there's always they do 2 stances, or they do 1, or they don't understand that you need to be a little bit more explosive when there's runners on base. So again, stances are the most important. If the first thing I should have drew on this iPad screen before I drew or before I wrote the word stances, I should have built a house. But I've already said that if you can think of the game Jenga, the stances are your foundation, right? So if you're building a house and you don't have a foundation, or you pour an awful foundation, what's going to happen to the house over time? Well, it's going to crumble. And that's the same thing about the rest of the fundamentals we're going to talk about here. If you don't have solid stances, if you don't know how to set yourself up, then everything else is going to give you trouble. You're going to wonder why you're not throwing well. You're going to wonder why you're slow or not, blocking properly, whether it be the blocking form or whether it be you not being fast enough to get to that block. Or you're going to wonder why you're not getting more called strikes, because your framing or receiving might be off. But if you actually look at the first thing you need to know, it's how you're set up. It's your stances. Number 1 is your stances. Okay, I can't stress it enough. It drives me nuts that some people just don't know that there's 3 stances. It just drives me nuts. And I mean, it may or may not be their fault. A lot of times it's not their fault. They just don't know. But it's like, oh, this is where we have to start. And everybody, when I say, oh, how do you sit? Let me show me how you sit. And they're like, oh yeah, that's how I catch. It's like, okay, well, now show me your other stance. And then they go, what other stance? Well, there's 3 of them. So let's talk about them, because this is the foundation of everything you're going to do for the rest of your career as you're a catcher. So you have to have stances, okay? So there's 3 stances. The 3 stances are your sign-giving stance. And again, this is all in-depth, quick start to catching program. So I'm not going to spend much time on it here. But again, you have your sign giving stance. Okay, that's when you're giving signs to your pitcher. You need to make sure that the coaches and parents behind you aren't picking your signs up. You got to make sure that any runners aren't picking your signs up. But then there's you need to make sure your pitcher can see your signs. The older you get, there's other teammates that need to see your signs so they can set up the field. So that's very important. Then there's the receiving stance. The receiving stance is with nobody on base. Okay, we want to be lower. We want to make sure we're giving a good target, and we want to be lower with our body so we make sure that the ump behind us sees the strike zone, sees the pitches come over the plate, and we're giving him or her a good view so they can call strikes. Okay, and then the third stance is the secondary stance, and the secondary stance is your stance when there's runners on base, and this is a stance where we're up a little bit more, we're on the balls of our feet, and we are in a position where we can be quicker and more explosive. So if we need to block, we can block faster. If we need to throw, we can get out of our stance quick, boom, and throw runners out, second, third, pick somebody off at first, whatever we have to do. The secondary stance is where we are in a more athletic and explosive position, okay? So number one, the first thing you need to have are your stances. That's first and foremost, okay? That is the foundation of your entire catching fundamental. If it was a house of fundamentals, the stances are your foundation, okay? So again, sign giving, receiving, and secondary. Then from there, what do we have to do once we have our stances down? Well, we have to be able to catch the ball. We have to be able to catch the ball with minimal amount of movement, right? We don't want to be too herky-jerky. I see that sometimes. When the ball's coming at us, we want to be real smooth. We want to make it look like the pitcher hit their spot so well that it should be a called strike. And if it's not a called strike, it should be a crime, right? Because it just looks so good. So that is receiving, okay? That's receiving with soft hands, receiving being subtle, right? And this is either in your receiving stance or in your secondary stance, but receiving, and then with receiving as a package deal of the second fundamental, not only receiving well, but then being able to frame, knowing the strike zone. And we're going to talk about that here in another video, probably the next video that I do and next podcast that I do. I think we're going to go into framing, but knowing the strike zone and knowing how to work your glove around the strike zone. Very, very important. The more strikes that we can get for our pitchers, the more we can make our pitchers look good. And they might be good or they might be having a bad day, but the more we can make them look good, the better off we're going to be, the happier our pitchers are going to be, and the more strikes we get, the harder it's going to be for the other team, right? Because if we can frame so well that we're giving our pitcher 6 inches off the plate and making it look like it was right over the corner, that's going to change the hitter's game, right, of the opposing team, and that's going to make our pitcher more comfortable. It just changes the momentum, right? So that's very important for us, okay? So the better that we can receive and make it look easy, and then not only receive and make it look easy, but command that strike zone and help our pitchers out to get a couple extra inches where we can frame that pitch and get a called strike for them, that really changes the odds. And there's just recently in the last, I think, like 5 to 10 years, I would say probably the last 5 years for sure, the professional analytics, of the MLB have been looking into catchers who can frame the best and give their pitchers more opportunities for strikes. And it just shows you the odds of how much it changes a game. So being able to receive and frame well is so important. And that's our number one job, right? We are catchers. That's our name. So we have to be able to catch and frame, okay? So our stance is number one, and catching and receiving number two, so important. And from there, once we are set up properly, once we can catch and receive, and we're not dropping balls everywhere, and we're decent enough to be back there where we're getting strikes, we need to be able to block the ball, okay? A lot of times, if you can catch and you can throw, that's what everybody gets hyped up about, right? Kid can catch, throw the catcher back there, right? Whoever it is, throw him back there. Can he catch the ball? He can catch the ball. Is he afraid of it? No, he can catch it, right? And then after that, everybody wants him to throw. But if you're an opposing coach, right? If I'm coaching against you and I know your catcher can't block for anything, and I know your pitcher's probably going to throw 10 pitches in the dirt this game, I'm going to guess that I'm going to have good odds of that ball going past your catcher. So there's going to be really limited times that I'm going to straight steal on your catcher. He might have a good arm. He or she might have a great arm. But if I know that he or she's going to have 5, 6, 7, 8 pass balls this game, I'm going to tell my guys, hey, listen, if you're fast, if you think you can do it, we might have you steal. Everybody else, wait for the ball to pass the catcher. Take that free base. Take it. Don't even put yourself in a situation where you're going to get thrown out. Wait for that ball to go to the backstop. Take the base. You can practically probably walk there because it doesn't matter how hard they throw, they can't stop the ball. So just take your free base, right? So like I said, everybody gets so hyped up about throwing. Oh, this catcher has a great arm. Can they block? No. Well, great. What's that going to do for me when they're having 6, 7 pass balls a game? Not much, right? So you need to be able to block the ball. And there's so much that goes into blocking, right? You got to have the quickness. You got to have the speed. You have to have the form. There's so much that goes into blocking. For me, there's 6 parts to a blocking form. That'll be in a different video as well. But that's in Quick Start to Catching program, quickstarttocatching.com. All that stuff's talked about. Blocking is not easy. Blocking is not easy at all. Think about it. You have an oncoming object coming at you, a little ball or, a little baseball or a softball. And as a catcher, you have to put your body on the line to block that, right? And sure, once you get the form down, you learn how to square it up on your chest protector. It doesn't hurt. But when you're young, new catchers, they get worried about it because they say, hey, this thing's coming at me fast, and now I gotta get hit. So blocking isn't easy, but it's fun. Once you learn how to do it, it's so fun. And to be able to block a fastball. Blocking a fastball, I think, is one of the hardest things to do. Number one, the older you get, you don't expect a fastball to go in the dirt because your pitcher should be able to command that, but sometimes that'll slip or whatever it may be. And it's a fastball is always the fastest thing that they throw, right? But then being able to block off-speed pitches, you have to know the physics of the pitches where the spin of a curveball doesn't keep going. I should say a slurve. A slurve is going to come in this way, hit the dirt, and it's going to back up this way. It's not going to continue that way. So you have to know how to position your body in a way that not only stops the ball, but keeps it in front of you where it doesn't hit off and go towards the dugout or, where you're chasing it all over the place. Because if you just throw your body in front of it the wrong way and it goes off to the dugout, it really didn't help. You might as well just let it go to the backstop, right? So blocking's hard, but it's so important. So important. To me, it's the third most important thing, and it comes before throwing. If you're going to work on throwing, make sure that you spend enough time, either as much or more, working with your catcher on blocking, because if they cannot block, an opposing team is going to know that your catcher cannot block the ball, and they're not going to test their famous strong arm out, right? They're going to wait for the ball to pass. They're going to take a free base, okay? So, again, we have the stances. We have catching and receiving and framing. We have blocking. And then, of course, we have throwing, everybody's favorite. Everybody loves throwing runners out. They love it. Who doesn't love it, right? I actually have not changed the screen here a couple times, so I'm going to put throwing on there. Should have been paying attention to the screen, but number 4 is throwing. So again, this is everybody's favorite. What kid doesn't love to throw somebody out at second base who's trying to steal on them? What fan doesn't love to see somebody throw a runner out? The caught stealing from a catcher going to second base is one of the most fun because it's a really challenging thing. I mean, and even some of the coolest throwouts that I've had in my life, I can remember so vividly. And it's very exciting. Like one of the things I remember was I could just play it out in my head was when I was in college. I was catching our closer. He threw a splitter, right? He had a splitter, and his splitter would dive down, and it'd be hard. And we were playing a team down in the South, and they had one of their fast guys on first base. Well, they had a straight steal on a splitter, and the splitter was coming in down in the dirt. I picked it off the dirt, threw it from my knees, and it was a bang bang play. He slid right into our second baseman's glove. I threw him out, caught stealing. But it was like that challenge, that challenge for a catcher. If you're going to steal second on me, I can't wait to throw you out, right? That's just, for catchers, it's just one of the coolest things that you can do. And it's fun to watch too. So that's why everybody gets hyped up about it. It's your speed against my arm strength is what it comes down to. So, it's a real exciting thing, and that's why everybody hypes up about throwing. So once your kid can catch the ball, everybody wants to make sure that they can throw runners out. But you got to make sure that you're building that up as the last part of your building blocks. Because if you have a catcher that can't block, throwing doesn't matter. Okay? It just doesn't. I'm telling you. You may think it does. And you can challenge me. You can put in the comments that I'm wrong, that throwing doesn't matter. But I'm telling you, if I'm coaching against you and I know your catcher cannot block, your throws do not matter. We're going to take easy bases on pass balls. So once you have the stances down, once you have catching and receiving and framing down, once you have blocking down, your throwing is everything. That's where you hone in on everything for throwing, okay? Make sure you're being accurate to second base. Make sure your pop time is quick to second base. Make sure you can pick people off at first. Make sure you're working on your throws to third, okay? Because that's all very important. And again, if any of this to you, if I've said anything that doesn't make sense, doesn't ring a bell with you, quickstarttokatching.com. I go over all this in detail. It's an hour's worth of video. I go into instruction on all this stuff, and then I even show videos with for my lessons. Yeah, I took some video of my lessons doing drills, so you can see drills that you can do on your own or with your players if you're a coach, and work on all this stuff. And again, to me, the hierarchy of the fundamentals are your stances, receiving and framing, blocking and throwing. But once you have a solid foundation of all these, okay, once you have a younger kid who is learning how to do all this and you build it up, these are things that you need to do every day with your older catchers, okay? If you are a high school coach, I have the 25-minute catcher's practice plan that I created. It's a simple PDF. You can download it for free. It's also part of the Quick Start to Catching program. I put that in there because I think it relates to the entire thing, and I think it creates a lot of value for the stuff that I show you to use. But you can get the practice program for free. I give you a blank template, and then I even give you another template that I filled out so you can see what I'm talking about. But 25 minutes a day, 25 minutes of practice. There's so many times where, as a catcher, your practice time is really almost feels like a waste of time because either you're doing infield and you're catching the ball back, tossing it to your head coach so he can hit fungos, or you're catching bullpens, which bullpens are very important, but you're not really getting your position-specific training. So 20 to 25 minutes a day. You need to work on all this with your older catchers, okay? Catchers need to work on this stuff every day. You need to loosen up working on your stances. That should be something that's part of your stretch routine. Get your stances for a couple seconds, count it out, figure it out. Receiving, blocking, throwing, all stuff that needs to happen every day. Every day. I can't stress it enough. Every day. These are things I do with all my lessons. If you're new, we go through all this stuff, and I make sure that you have a solid foundation before we move on to everything else. There's so much in catching, right? So much in catching. But you have to have this first, because this is what makes you a solid catcher. This is what's going to give you more playing time over another catcher if you have all four of these down and, ready to work all these. Because a lot of times, especially at the younger ages, I see a catcher that can do two of these. I see a catcher that can do one of these well. And then when that one catcher comes that looks great in all his stances, he's got 3 stances, he or she can receive and frame well and can block and then can throw runners out. It's like an anomaly. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that player is an anomaly. It's these 4 things that you as a catcher, that you as a coach, that you as a parent need to work on with your kid every day. And again, if you don't know what any of these are, if you don't know where to start, if you are saying to yourself, I don't know, there's 3 stances, I don't know what framing is, I don't know what a block is, I don't know how that form looks, or how can I increase my pop time throwing to second base, quickstarttocatching.com. It's all in that program I created. And I hope you just check it out, because to me, I think it's an incredible program, incredible value. I put a lot of work into it, and it's I wanted to give everything on a not just for the lessons that I work with all the time, but I wanted to give something out there where if you're not around where I live, that you have this program that you can watch, and it's like working with me remotely, right? So super important. So again, the hierarchy of the fundamentals, the order of importance that I think are your stances: receiving and framing, blocking, and throwing. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I'm sorry, I can't talk today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And if you guys have any questions, concerns, comments, or anything that you want to see in another video, please feel free to put it in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe. Again, this is Crash Course Catching. I am Frank Ruvoli, your catching coach. I'll see you guys again soon.